The polished dining room of the Mitchell estate felt colder than usual, despite the soft glow of the chandelier overhead. Brittney Mitchell sat rigidly at the end of the long mahogany table, her hands clenched into fists against the polished wood. Across from her, Amanda Mitchell, elegant in her usual tailored gray suit, wore a look of calm authority that only made Brittney's blood boil. "You can't be serious," Brittney said, her voice trembling with disbelief. "An arranged marriage in 2025? Amanda gave a slow, deliberate nod. "It's not about the times. It's about the Mitchell legacy and honoring your father's word." Brittney shot up from her chair. "He made that deal when I was still in diapers. I didn't sign anything. You've lived your entire life in the safety that deal secured," Amanda replied evenly. "Your education, your opportunities, everything you've built came from the foundation Tony Mitchell protected. We owed the Braddocks then, and we still do." The word "owe" felt like a slap. Brittney turned away, pacing. "So I'm just a bargaining chip in a corporate chess match?" Amanda stood now too, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. "You're not a pawn, Brittney. You're a Mitchell. And being a Mitchell means making hard choices." Brittney laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one being married off to Camden Braddock like some royal trade agreement." Amanda's voice softened slightly. "You've known Camden. You were children together. We haven't spoken since we were 15, and back then, he couldn't stand me. He doesn't have to love you," Amanda said, finality in her voice. "This isn't about love. It's about protecting this family. If you don't marry him, the board may walk away from the merger. Our company, everything your father built, will be lost." Brittney stared at her mother, then down at the ring box placed silently in front of her. Legacy, debt, loyalty, the words churned in her mind like poison. The next afternoon in the sleek glass tower of Braddock Enterprises, Brittney sat across from Camden Braddock for the first time in years. He was taller now, broader in the shoulders, his features sharper and his eyes colder. Whatever boyish charm he once had was long gone. "So," Camden said dryly, "they convinced you too?" Brittney met his gaze, unflinching. "Let's just say resistance wasn't an option." "My father gave me no choice," Camden said. "Do this or I'll find someone who would, then no trust for you." "Charming," Brittney muttered. They shared a moment of mutual contempt, then silence. "I'm not here to play husband," Camden said at last. "We put on the show, public unity, and live separate lives in private. 1 year, then we go our own ways." "Agreed," Brittney replied. "No pretense, no intimacy, just business." He nodded. "Then we're clear." But before the meeting ended, Brittney leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Just one thing, Camden." He arched a brow. "Yes? Don't underestimate me. I may not want this, but I won't be anyone's puppet." A flicker of something, respect perhaps, passed through Camden's expression. "Noted," he said coolly. They shook hands, two reluctant allies, bound by legacy, not love. The wedding was nothing short of spectacular. A private ceremony held at the Braddock Estate's glass garden pavilion. It was adorned with white orchids, crystal chandeliers, and an army of photographers stationed discreetly behind velvet ropes. Brittney wore a sleek ivory gown with a minimalist design, her expression poised and unreadable. Camden stood beside her in a navy tuxedo, his face the perfect blend of solemn and photogenic. To the world, they were the epitome of modern royalty, two wealthy heirs uniting empires with style and grace. The headlines were relentless: the Braddock-Mitchell alliance, love, legacy, and billion-dollar vows. From business to bridal, Camden and Brittney sealed the deal. What the press didn't see was the silence between them as they returned to their penthouse later that evening. The air was heavy, their suite immaculate and sterile. 2 champagne flutes sat untouched on a marble table, as Brittney walked straight to the guest bedroom and shut the door without a word. Camden went the other way. The weeks that followed were a carefully curated dance. Together, they attended charity galas, launched joint initiatives, and made public appearances that were broadcast across business networks. They posed with polished smiles and expertly timed glances, just enough chemistry to make headlines, not enough to betray the truth. Behind closed doors, they lived like cordial strangers. Camden was always working, buried in board strategy and quarterly projections. Brittney threw herself into Mitchell Designs, determined to prove that her value wasn't just her last name. And she did. Her vision reinvigorated the company's brand with bold new product lines and partnerships. Her designs trended on social media. Her pitches to investors were clean, captivating, and forward-thinking. Braddock Enterprises, once known for its conservative corporate stance, suddenly had a new edge, thanks in large part to the creativity pouring out of the Mitchell wing. The merger, finalized just 2 months after the wedding, was declared a success. Still, inside their shared home, silence prevailed. It was during a routine board meeting that something shifted. Brittney was presenting a quarterly innovation report to the Braddock board when one of the older members, a man named Langston, interrupted with a condescending chuckle. "While we all appreciate your artistic enthusiasm, Mrs. Braddock, the board is more concerned with profitability than Pinterest aesthetics." A few chuckles followed. Brittney stiffened, but before she could reply, Camden leaned forward. "Langston," he said flatly, "if you'd taken 5 minutes to review the last sales report, you'd see that Mitchell's aesthetics raised Q2 profits by 14%. Kindly don't confuse vision with fluff." The room went still. Brittney glanced at Camden, startled. His eyes remained fixed on Langston, his voice cool and dismissive. After the meeting, as they stepped into the elevator, she spoke quietly. "You didn't have to do that." Camden kept his gaze on the floor numbers. "I don't tolerate incompetence, especially when it's dressed up as arrogance." But something unspoken passed between them. A flicker of acknowledgement. Respect. The walls between them didn't collapse overnight, but cracks began to show. One evening, Brittney returned late from the design studio, hair windblown and eyes heavy. She found Camden asleep on the sofa, laptop still open, spreadsheets glowing on the screen. Without thinking, she draped a throw blanket over him and turned off the light. The next morning, he didn't mention it, but his coffee mug, usually placed beside his own chair, sat next to hers. On her birthday, she found a leather-bound sketchbook waiting at her workstation. Handmade, Italian with her initials etched in gold. No note, but she knew. At night, their conversations grew slightly longer. Less business, more human. She discovered Camden played the piano when he thought no one was listening. He learned that she collected antique brooches because they reminded her of her grandmother. They never spoke of love. Never touched more than necessary. But somewhere between public smiles and private silences, something real began to bloom. Quiet, cautious, and utterly unspoken. The news came on a rainy Thursday morning. Malcolm Braddock, patriarch of Braddock Enterprises and architect of countless high-stakes deals, including the Mitchell marriage contract, was dead. A sudden heart attack in his home office. No warning, no chance for last words. Camden received the call while reviewing international expansion plans. He didn't flinch, didn't speak, just nodded once and ended the call. By the time the press released the statement, Camden was already walking through the halls of Braddock Enterprises like a man made of stone. Sympathy filled the eyes of board members, but behind their handshakes and somber expressions was a clear hunger for control. Camden was the new CEO. In name, but the board didn't trust him. They viewed him as a placeholder, a shadow of Malcolm's iron rule. Within days of the funeral, whispers turned into motions. Some proposed restructuring. Others demanded a change in leadership style. A few not so subtly suggested he step down. Camden didn't fight it, at least not yet. Instead, he made a quiet decision of his own. The marriage had served its purpose. The company merger was completed. Mitchell Designs was thriving. The Mitchell family's debt was fully absorbed and erased. The contract, both legal and emotional, was fulfilled. So he filed for divorce. He assumed Brittney would be relieved. She had never asked for any of it. Not the marriage, not the press attention, not the cold partnership they'd kept for over a year. She deserved her freedom. Brittney received the papers on a quiet morning at her design studio. She stared at them for a long time, unmoving, before signing her name in careful strokes. Her chest ached as she sealed the envelope, but she said nothing to anyone. When she told her mother, Amanda barely hid her relief. "Finally," Amanda said with a breath of satisfaction, "you've done your duty, and now the family is free." Brittney forced a smile and nodded. But that night, she stood alone in her apartment, wine glass untouched beside her, staring out at the skyline with a tightness in her chest she couldn't name. Freedom. She was supposed to feel relief, triumph. Instead, she felt hollow. The silence of her new life echoed louder than expected. She no longer had to attend board dinners, no more staged interviews, no more morning coffee left at her desk, no more soft piano music drifting down the hallway after midnight. They had never been in love. They'd barely even been friends. But somewhere in the hollow spaces between obligation and avoidance, something had taken root. Respect. Familiarity. A fragile tether neither of them had acknowledged aloud. And now it was severed. The divorce was finalized with mutual signatures and a brief legal meeting. No press releases, no dramatic headlines, just a quiet end to a carefully constructed alliance. Camden didn't linger afterward. He thanked her for her cooperation, for her professionalism, for her contributions to the merger. Brittney smiled and wished him well. Her voice didn't shake, but her fingers clenched around the strap of her handbag. They walked out of the courthouse through separate doors. Amanda threw a small dinner to celebrate her daughter's return to independence. Brittney laughed politely at her mother's toasts, accepted congratulations from family friends, and said all the right things. But that night, when she returned home, she sat alone on the edge of her bed, still in her formal dress, her makeup untouched. She reached for her phone, staring at Camden's number for several seconds before locking the screen and setting it down. She didn't call him, and he didn't call her, but the quiet between them now felt less like closure and more like unfinished business. It was nearly dusk when Brittney arrived at the rooftop cafe in Midtown. The amber skyline spilled across the city like melted gold, casting long shadows between the towering buildings. The air was crisp with early spring, and Brittney pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders as she scanned the tables. Camden was already there, seated in the far corner, his blazer draped over the back of his chair, and his sleeves rolled up. Shirt creased slightly, like he hadn't slept much. He looked out over the skyline, lost in thought, until he sensed her presence. "Brittney," he said, standing. His voice was calm, but his eyes were heavier than usual. "Thanks for meeting me," she said softly, taking the seat across from him. He gave a small nod. "You sounded like you needed to talk." She studied him for a moment. He looked thinner, sharper around the edges, not broken, but worn. "I wanted to see how you're doing," she said. "After your father." Camden exhaled through his nose, hands clasped in front of him. "You know, everyone keeps offering condolences. Board members, press, even the janitor on the 24th floor. And I smile, nod, thank them like I'm supposed to." Brittney waited quietly, sensing more was coming. "But the truth is," he paused, "I don't know how to grieve a man I barely knew." She tilted her head. "You weren't close?" Camden gave a dry laugh. "He raised me like a soldier, not a son. Every moment was business, every conversation a lesson, every compliment a transaction." He glanced down at the table. "I don't even know what his favorite meal was," he said. "I don't know if he had one." Brittney's chest tightened. "I'm sorry, Camden." He looked up at her. "You don't need to say that. You, of all people, know what he was like." There was silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need filling. Finally, Camden sat back and sighed. "And now the board wants me gone. They've been circling for months. Malcolm Braddock's death was their green light." "But you're going to fight it?" she asked. "I have to." His voice sharpened, steadier now. "Not for him, for me. I've put in the work. I know this company better than anyone on that board. And I'm not letting them erase me, just because my last name doesn't intimidate them anymore." Brittney nodded slowly. "Good, you should fight." Camden looked at her, as if truly seeing her for the first time in months. "You didn't have to come, you know." "I know," she said. Then, after a moment, "I wanted to." He tilted his head. "Why?" She hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I wanted to thank you," she said finally, "for the divorce. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. But I also wanted to say, she hesitated, I miss it. Not the public show, not the contract, just the little things. Camden leaned in, his voice quieter now. Like what? She smiled faintly. You leaving coffee by my chair. That old jazz playlist you always put on at night. The sketchbook you gave me on my birthday. You didn't even sign it. I figured you'd know, he said softly. I did, she whispered. That's why it mattered. There was a silence between them again. This one heavier, more fragile. The marriage wasn't real, she said. But some of it felt like it could have been. Camden didn't respond right away. His jaw clenched slightly, and his eyes drifted back to the skyline. Maybe we were just too busy playing our roles, he said finally. Too afraid to admit we wanted more. She nodded, lips pressed together. Maybe. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Brittney stood. I should go. Camden rose with her. Brittney. She turned. Thank you, he said quietly, for checking on me. A soft smile played at her lips. Always. And then she walked away, heels tapping against stone, the quiet between them deeper than ever, yet not quite empty. Camden sat at the head of the long conference table, his jaw set like stone. The Braddock boardroom was tense, silent but for the hum of the city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. A screen behind him displayed stock charts and merger performance projections, but no one seemed to be looking at them. Instead, all eyes were on Langston Rowe, the board's oldest and most calculated member. Polished in his designer suit and silver tie pin, Langston stood with the cool arrogance of a man who had been biding his time. The numbers speak for themselves, Langston said, his voice smooth. Braddock Enterprises has seen a short-term boost from the Mitchell merger. But our long-term projections have become unstable. Investors are questioning Camden's leadership. Camden didn't flinch. He'd heard the whispers, the carefully leaked doubts. Langston had been planting seeds since the funeral. Langston paced a step. We must be honest with ourselves and our shareholders. The late Mr. Braddock's passing left a vacuum. And while Camden has done his best, the results, objectively, speak to a lack of direction. There it was. A formal motion to remove him was coming. Camden looked around the table. Some board members avoided his gaze. Others seemed mildly regretful. A few looked hungry. He didn't see Brittney enter. Not until she spoke. I think we need to redefine what lack of direction actually means. Heads turned. Camden's eyes locked onto hers as Brittney strode into the room, her heels echoing sharply against the marble floor. She wore a sleek charcoal suit and an air of quiet defiance. Langston narrowed his eyes. Miss Mitchell, this is a board meeting. You don't have standing here. No, she said, but as the former CEO of Mitchell Designs, the co-architect of the merger, and someone who still holds voting shares, I believe I do. The room went still. Camden sat back, stunned but silent. Brittney stepped beside the screen and looked at the board, her voice steady. Camden Braddock didn't destabilize this company. He saved it from becoming an empty shell of legacy and pride with no innovation. The merger you're now questioning, it revitalized Braddock's stagnant portfolio, expanded into new markets, and drove a demographic increase your old strategies never could. She let the words sink in. But more importantly, he did it under pressure none of you understand. While grieving a father who gave him nothing but expectations, Camden honored an agreement none of us wanted. A marriage arranged decades ago between our families, when we were just infants, to cover debts and consolidate power. Gasps rippled through the room. Some board members stiffened. Others exchanged wary glances. Yes, she said clearly. Many of you already knew. You benefited from that deal. Your positions, your companies, your own shares were stabilized when Braddock Enterprises absorbed Mitchell's liabilities. You stayed silent then. Langston recovered quickly, stepping forward. This has nothing to do with the current issue. Our concern is Camden's recent performance. No, Brittney cut in. Your concern is control and your ambition. Her eyes flicked to Langston. Let's talk about performance then. About the phantom funds allocated to consulting firms during Malcolm Braddock's tenure. Or how several members here greenlit a falsified R&D expenditure to cover a failed acquisition 5 years ago. Langston's jaw twitched. Brittney stepped closer to the table. If you want to open this door, I'm ready to have those dealings brought to the shareholders and to the SEC. She held their eyes one by one, unblinking. I'm not defending Camden because I owe him anything. We're divorced. There's no benefit for me in standing here, but I've seen what he's capable of. He leads with integrity, even when it costs him. He honors promises he never should have had to keep. That's the kind of CEO you want, even if he's not the one you planned for. The silence afterward was thick with fear and respect. One by one, the board members leaned back, shifting uncomfortably. No one dared support Langston's motion now. Langston sat down slowly, lips tight. Camden stood. His voice, when it came, was quiet but powerful. This meeting is adjourned. Outside the boardroom, Camden found her near the elevators, arms crossed but calm. You didn't have to do that, he said. I know, she replied, turning toward him. But I meant every word. He studied her, voice softer. You could have let them bury me. She shrugged lightly. I don't let good people get buried. Camden searched her face. You set me free, she said. That wasn't a betrayal. It was the most honest thing you ever did. They stood there, two people no longer bound by contract, no longer pretending, just present. Thank you, Brittney, he said. She smiled faintly. Take care of the company, Camden. I will, he promised. But I'd rather not do it alone. A pause. Then she stepped into the elevator. As the door slid closed, her voice drifted out. Then don't. 3 months later, Brittney Mitchell stood at the helm of Mitchell Creative Holdings, a revitalized design empire reborn from tradition, driven by innovation. The company had shed its outdated image and embraced the future, expanding into sustainable fashion and tech-integrated design. For the first time, she wasn't just her father's daughter or a silent partner in a forced alliance. She was CEO, and she had earned every inch of her title. Her team followed her lead with sharp confidence, and the business world had taken notice. Trade magazines praised her vision. Investors followed her strategies. Employees stayed loyal because they saw her work twice as hard as anyone around her. Meanwhile, Camden Braddock had launched a quiet revolution of his own. The Braddock boardroom no longer echoed with old voices and outdated loyalties. One by one, the legacy board members were replaced with forward-thinking innovators, diverse, hungry, and unafraid to challenge him. He welcomed it. For the first time in his life, Camden wasn't living in his father's shadow. He was building something of his own, brick by intentional brick. The company was leaner, sharper, and, according to early projections, more profitable than it had been in over a decade. The industry gala at the Hudson Grand was glittering with success stories and smug smiles. Brittney moved through the crowd in a sleek black gown, her name whispered with admiration as she passed. She paused at the bar for a drink, her gaze scanning the room, and then she saw him, Camden. He looked different tonight. Not in appearance, he still wore a clean-cut suit and an unreadable expression. But something about him was lighter, freer. He hadn't seen her yet. She turned back toward the bar, but before she could speak to the bartender, a familiar voice murmured beside her. Black dress suits you. She smiled without looking. And you still think subtlety is your strong suit? Camden chuckled, stepping beside her. I've been working on it. They turned to face one another. The silence stretched, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was warm, comfortable. I heard you're doing great things, he said. Likewise, she replied. You look happy. So do you. Their eyes met, and for a moment it felt like time folded in on itself, not erasing the past, but honoring it. No contracts, no obligations, no board meetings, just them. Friends? He offered softly. Brittney raised her glass. For now. And as they clinked glasses beneath the soft golden lights, both knew, this time, whatever it became, it would be real, and it would be theirs. 3 years later, The sun filtered gently through the tall windows of the Global Design and Innovation Summit in Lisbon. Journalists and executives bustled through the halls, whispering names and snapping photos. At the center of it all, Brittney Mitchell stood behind a podium, calm and radiant, her voice steady as she addressed a packed crowd. When legacy and innovation work together, not against each other, that's when we create something timeless. Applause broke out, flashbulbs sparked. Her words would trend by morning. Later that evening, Brittney wandered out to the balcony, the sound of distant chatter fading as the warm breeze brushed against her skin. She looked out over the city, her mind surprisingly quiet. Successful, respected, fulfilled. She had everything she once dreamed of. Footsteps approached behind her. "You're still stealing all the attention, I see." She turned, smiling as Camden Braddock joined her side. Champagne glass in hand. "Well," she teased, "some of us learned to play the long game." He grinned. His suit was casually unbuttoned, tie loosened, his face more relaxed than she ever remembered. The transformation over the years had been subtle, but undeniable. He was still Camden, still composed, still brilliant, but softer somehow, lighter. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, looking out at the skyline. "I read your latest quarterly report," Brittney said finally. "Your diversity incubator is brilliant." He raised an eyebrow. "Coming from you, that means a lot." "I mean it," she said. "You've done good work." "So have you," he replied. "Mitchell Creative is everywhere, and everyone knows it started with you." Their eyes met again. No tension, no walls, just history and possibility. "So," Camden asked carefully, "still just friends?" Brittney took a sip of her wine, considering. "Maybe." He smiled slowly. "Well, in that case, I'll keep showing up." She laughed, then shook her head. "You're relentless. Only when it's worth it." The music drifted from inside the ballroom, a slow jazz number, familiar somehow. He offered his hand. "Dance with me?" She paused, then set her glass down and took his hand. They stepped onto the balcony under the stars, moving slowly, quietly. No photographers, no contracts, no expectations, just Brittney and Camden, two people no longer bound by duty, but finally free to choose each other. On their terms. Forever, if they wanted. The end. Hope you enjoyed this heartwarming story by Green Tea Tales. Help our channel with like, share, and subscribe.